Hi class. Today we are going to talk about the endocrine system and hold on. Yeah. So we are going to talk about the endocrine system. And it is weird to think that everything that is shown in this picture is an endocrine gland. Even the adipose tissue, the stomach, even the kidneys. So I'm going to lecture on many of the glands that you see in this picture. We will start by talking about hormones. What is a hormone? A hormone is a type of chemical signal. When we talk about endocrine system and hormones, we are talking about cell signaling. A hormone is a chemical signal that is distributed into the bloodstream. It is released by a cell or a gland without using duct, and it is released into the bloodstream, and it can have a target cell that is very distant, and a target cell has a functional receptor that can bind to the specific hormone. So in the picture on the right hand side, if you look at the very bottom, there are some cells that are producing the hormones. The hormones here are represented by the red dots. So the cells are producing the hormones and are releasing the hormones into the bloodstream. The hormones travel via blood, and then the hormones populate the receptors on the target cells that are very, very distant. Do you see that? So the hormones populate the distant target cells. So that is the classic mechanism of hormone action. Apart from this, hormones can also work as autocrine regulators. And if you look at the picture on the very top here, this is a cell that is producing the hormones, again hormones in red balls. And these hormones, once released by the cell, bind to receptors that are present on the surface of the particular cell. So this is autocrine, meaning the hormones bind to the receptors of the very cells that actually produce the hormones. Then hormones can also work as paracrine regulators. If you look at this picture here, so the secretory cell, we have a secretory cell here that is producing the hormones shown by the red balls. These hormones, once being released by the secretory cells, bind to specific receptors that are on the surface of a neighboring target cell. So in case of paracrine signaling, know that the target cell is very close to the secretory cells. So they're kind of neighbors. Okay. All right. Sorry. Okay. Now, how a cell will respond to a hormone depends on its gene expression. Now, when we talk about hormonal actions, what is the goal? The ultimate goal is to change the physiology of the target cell. And how can this be done? This can be done by changing the activity of the current proteins that are expressed inside the target cell. Protein activity can be changed by either adding or removing a phosphate group to a protein. But we can also change cell physiology by changing gene expression of a downstream cell. All in all, whether it's phosphorylation or taking out a phosphate group or changing the gene expression of a downstream cell, downstream target cell will change its physiology. Now, what would happen if there was a defect in the gene that codes for a particular hormone, or a defect in the cell's machinery to make that particular hormone? Well, it would be like as if the signal was lost altogether. Okay. Moving on to hormonal interactions. Now, a given target tissue is usually responsive to a number of different hormones. These hormones may antagonize each other, or they might work together to produce effects that are additive or complementary. The responsiveness of a target tissue to a particular hormone is thus affected not only by the concentration of that hormone, but also by the effects of other hormones on that tissue. So here in this regard, we will talk about few terms that explain hormonal interactions. And these terms include synergistic, permissive, and antagonistic. Looking at synergistic effects of hormone interactions. Well, when two or more hormones work together to produce a particular result, their effects are said to be synergistic. Their effects may be additive or complementary to each other. The action of epinephrine and norepinephrine on the heart is a very good example of additive effect. Each of these hormones separately produces an increase in cardiac rate. Acting together in the same concentrations, they stimulate an even greater increase in cardiac rate. So this is a classic example of synergism of two hormones on increasing the cardiac rate. Another example is the ability of mammary glands to produce and secrete milk requires synergistic action of many hormones like estrogen, cortisol, prolactin, and oxytocin, which have complementary actions. That is, each of these hormones promotes a different aspect of mammary gland function so that their cooperative effects are required for lactation. So as we see, when we look into milk secretion, there has to be synergism there has to be a synergistic effect of multiple hormones like estrogen, cortisol, prolactin, and oxytocin. Good. So multiple hormones are working together to produce a particular effect. For testing purpose, I do expect my students to know that the action of epinephrine, norepinephrine on the heart, and the action of multiple hormones on the mammary gland, these are classic examples of synergism. Moving on to permissive effects. A hormone is said to have a permissive effect on the action of a second hormone when it enhances the responsiveness of a target organ to the second hormone, or when it increases the activity of the second hormone. What do we mean by that? All right, let's say I am a target cell. Okay, Rupa, I'm a target cell. And being a target cell, I have a receptor for a particular hormone. And let's say hormone A comes and binds to me. So I am exposed to hormone A. Good, that's a good thing. Now, as I'm interacting with hormone A, that actually induces formation of receptor proteins for another hormone, let's say hormone B. Therefore, now I have receptors for hormone A, but I have also developed receptors for hormone B. Therefore, when I actually interact with the hormone B later in my life, the interaction will be very, very efficient. Therefore, what do we see here? We see that my interaction, I'm a target cell, and my interaction with hormone A primes me for interaction with hormone B. So this is permissive effect. And classic example is, prior exposure of the uterus to estrogen, for example, induces formation of receptor proteins for progesterone, which improves the response of the uterus when it is subsequently exposed to progesterone. Therefore, we can say that estrogen has a permissive effect on the responsiveness of the uterus to progesterone. So one more time, the uterus is being exposed to estrogen first, and exposure of the uterus to estrogen induces formation of new receptor proteins for progesterone. Therefore, when in future the uterus is exposed to progesterone, the interaction is going to be a stronger one. Moving on to antagonistic effect. In some situations, the action of one hormone antagonizes the effect of another. And during pregnancy, for example, lactation is inhibited because high concentration of estrogen in blood inhibits the secretion and action of prolactin. Another example of antagonism is the action of insulin and glucagon, two hormones from the pancreatic islets, on adipose tissue. And insulin and glucagon, insulin promotes formation of fat, whereas glucagon promotes breakdown of fat. So these two hormones, insulin and glucagon, work opposite to one another, work in opposite directions. All right, I'm going to stop here and then continue with another video.